Hello, this is Justin Mason, and what you're about to hear is recordings from last weekend's Podapallooza 2024. This was a live stream event hosted over 2 days, 20 hours in total. And sometimes during this event, because so many different people are involved, the audio isn't quite what you would expect from a normal podcast. I hope you still enjoy the content, but I apologize if there is some choppiness or rough listening at points. Enjoy. So what are we doing today? We're raising money for Fantasy Cares. Every dollar you donate to donorbox.org/TGFBI gets you entered in to a raffle where you can win amazing prizes. You can win signed jerseys. You can win bobbleheads. You can win subscriptions to amazing sites. TGFBI entries for every $1,000 we raise between TGFBI donations and Podapallooza donations. But give away a spot in next year's TGFBI. The cumulative total for that already is at $8,700 between the two. That's over $2,500 for the entire weekend. So we'll be giving away at least 8 spots, maybe even more spots for TGFBI. So if you ever wanted to be in, those drafts start tomorrow, so you'll get in next year. But yeah, keep those donations coming. Fantasy Cares is a fantastic organization that we're supporting this year. They give away lots of toys at Christmas time through Toys for Tots drives all over the country. Last year, 25 cities. They gave away tens of thousands of dollars worth of toys. Just a fantastic organization run by Scott Fish. All right, let's bring in our next panel. We have some fun guys who are going to be talking about some fun things. Let's start with David Mendelson. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Justin. How are you, man? Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure to see you. I'll remind everybody where you can be reached on social media and talk about all that you do.
You can find me on Twitter at DMendio2. I do the Triple Play Fantasy Baseball podcast. Also do sports betting, football and baseball sports betting. And that will be at RPO Football starting next year. And just living on the Twitter streets otherwise.
All right. Also joining us is Kev. How you doing, Kev?
How's it going, Justin? David, good to see you. Good to talk with you today. I'm doing great. How's everybody else?
I'm doing great. It has been 17 hours now of live stream that I've either been a part of or running. So I'm still here. I'm pumped. I want to raise some more money and hear some more fantasy talk.
That's what we're here to do. I love the negativity. I'm here to talk busts. And this is the best part of the day, honestly.
You know what? I had to bring in some, David's a positive person, but I had to bring in some negative people. You are at the top of that list. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug all your work.
Yeah, I got Rotosurgeon down here on Twitter. Again, all of my stream of consciousness, all of the random thoughts that come to my head about baseball, football, basketball even. But, it's baseball season. We're hunkering down. We're in the thick of it. We got a month left. Spring training's great, but oh my God, if there's any warning I could put out is ignore all of the stats, ignore all the noise. The only thing that matters right now is injuries. The Operating Room podcast, I'm getting that back going for baseball season. So make sure to check that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all that good stuff. And my writings at Rotoballer, as always. So, check all that good stuff out. And, I'm excited to talk today.
Kev, I have to be honest for a second. I tried to get Sophie Sweeney on, but she said no.
Sophie Sweeney? You mean Sydney Sweeney?
No, I tried to get her sister, Sophie Sweeney.
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't even know she had a sister. I don't
even know. I'm just kidding, but
I mean, we can make a daughter, Sophie. No, I'm kidding. No, she has a fiance. I don't want to. I keep it on Twitter. I keep all that on Twitter.
Let's keep that one on Twitter right there.
Yeah,
I don't need the Podapallooza getting canceled here.
Your wife getting mad at you.
My wife's gonna be mad at me no matter what I do. So let's not worry too much about that. Speaking of negativity, speaking of knowing who the busts are going to be, we have Dave McDonald. How you doing, my friend?
This is getting off to a great start already. We got you're talking about Sophie Sweeney and negativity. All right, let's go. How are you guys?
Doing well. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and talk about what you do.
You can reach me at RunDMCD, add that D, on Twitter. And then I am on a podcast with you called Friends with Fantasy Benefits. And then I have another podcast called High Stakes Heat that's sometimes operational whenever Jake decides to get his lazy ass back on the microphone. So, yeah, you can catch me. Usually Twitter's the best place to reach me. But, yeah, feel free to come check us out anytime on the pods.
All right, and we're going to balance some of the negativity with some more positivity. We have Brian on as well. So how you doing, Brian?
Oh, I'm good, Justin. Thanks for having me. How's everybody?
Good.
Fantastic. Right. Remind everybody where you reach social media and plug what you do.
All right, I'm at RoadHQ on Twitter, and I'm at Baseball HQ, where I write at least one article per week there, and then I'll be doing the sports betting stuff at Sportsbook Wire again for baseball season.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have a fantastic hour. I'm sure this is going to be really fun to listen to, and I will see you guys at the top of the hour.
All right, man. Thank you, Justin.
Let's ruin it. Let's make this the worst Podapallooza. I'm kidding. No, let's get this going. I'm excited.
Yeah, I've potted with Dave before. Kev, obviously, I know you, but we have never potted together. And Brian, we've never potted together. I feel like it's going to be a fun hour. But thanks, of course, Justin, for having us all here. And as he mentioned before, every dollar raised helps Fantasy Cares, which is a great charity run from Scott Fish. So if you can donate or have the means to donate, just go to donorbox.org/TGFBI. As he's mentioned, there's tons of great prizes you can win. So it's all for a great cause. But yeah. As Justin said, let's kick things off. We're talking busts tonight. Everybody likes the glamour of the breakouts and the sleepers, and we kind of get what everybody doesn't like to talk about as much, the busts. So I'm gonna start here. Let's go by position, and let's start off at catcher. And catcher looks as good as it ever has, you could say, in recent years. There's a lot of studs at the top and a lot of quality catchers. But there are some landmines out there, and we're tasked to find them right now. So let's kick it off. And Kev, you're going right at the top here with William Contreras, who, if I'm not mistaken, was the number one catcher in Roto last year. I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure he was. If he wasn't number one, he was high up the list. How come you are fading William Contreras this year?
Well, okay. The offense I don't expect to be good. I think the Brewers offense should be towards the below average range. They're not the worst. They still have some solid pieces. Christian Yelich is still kind of kicking, even though his back spasms come in and out of his life. Rhys Hoskins, I'm not in love with. After an ACL tear, I don't think he's a massive addition to the offense. Overall, they've been selling. They just traded Corbin Burns. They lost Brandon Woodruff to I think a shoulder injury, so he's not going to be pitching for a while. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of the Brewers offense. William Contreras overperformed his ex-WOBA by a good bit, by about 20 points last year. He steals a little bit, but he's not on the JT Realmuto, 15 to 20 steal pace. He's more of an 8 to 10 steal guy. He had 6 last year, but that was in 141 games, 611 plate appearances. I feel like he's a really good prospect, great defensive catcher, or at least last year he was. So good in real life, meh in fantasy. You could get a ton of catchers going, in the 150 to 200 range that should perform roughly similarly to him in the counting stats without the 6 to 8 steals, let's say.
Yeah, I guess you mentioned JT Realmuto going right behind him, should give you more steals and has a better track record. I do know, Brian, you talked about Adley Rutschman in sense of that you maybe didn't think he was going to be a bust, but his ADP is very high. He's kind of in his own tier when it comes to catchers, at least over on NFBC ADP over the last 2 weeks. He's going in the top 50, the only catcher going inside the top 50. To you, it's just all price at this point, but not necessarily the player.
Right. Yeah, I expect him to have another solid year, but I just think he belongs in that next tier with Realmuto and Contreras and a few others. So I don't think he stands out above that pack. And I think whether or not he should be number one catcher is up for debate. I probably wouldn't have him number one, but close. But I just think he belongs down there with those guys rather than in his own tier.
So, Dave, we talked about the top 2 catchers, Adley Rutschman and William Contreras. I don't know if there's necessarily one that you are specifically fading, but are you kind of in the same philosophy that these catchers at the top are not worth drafting and you would rather take some of these guys later on?
Yeah, definitely. I just like, and I look at Adley Rutschman, and I mean, think he's great, but unless you think he's going to hit for, like a 300 plus average, which maybe he could, I don't see a lot of difference between him and Will Smith, for example. Like they pretty much, runs RBI. I mean, Rutschman plays more, but his Baltimore's offense compared to the Dodgers offense, I just don't like. Smith had basically the same amount of runs and RBI in like 100 some less plate appearances. So, same amount of home runs, neither of them run. I think with Adley, you're getting a lot of plate appearances and you're getting a good average, which I'm not trying to undervalue, but in like, he's going like the third round in Earth leagues. And it's just too high for me. Like I just, there's other things that I need at that point. And there's catchers as deep this year as it's ever been. So I'm willing to wait a bit on that.
Yeah. Adley's weird. Adley, like you look at him, you're paying up for he's one of the best catchers. He's arguably the best catcher in baseball. But I look at the Baltimore offense. I'm like, I'd rather have the Dodgers offense, the guy hitting fourth in that every day. I know Adley might hit second or third. Great, whatever. But I have Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts hitting in front of Will Smith. That's 100 plus RBIs if he plays 140 games. Yeah, I'm looking at this. Yeah, I'd rather have Will Smith than Adley. And then if I need steals, if I started without steals to start my draft, I'm taking JT Realmuto.
I was about to say, would it shock anybody if JTR was the number one catcher this year? It wouldn't shock me in the slightest.
That's a great offense too, and a better home park. So it's just give me Will Smith or JT over Adley. William Contreras. What's the difference between him and his brother Wilson?
I knew that's where it was going there. Yeah,
like it's the same shit. And the Cardinals' offense is very good. It's better than the Brewers' offense. And I guess he ended the year with a wrist sprain, but even so, I think Wilson's healthy to start the year. I think Wilson is just as good, if not better, than William without the 5 to 6 or 8 steals or whatever.
Yeah, I think we can take away from this is we're all in agreement. Catcher is worth waiting on. If you're going to take a stud at the top, take JTR, take Will Smith, someone that's in a better offense that you can get at much more of a discount. So I think we're all in lockstep with that one. So let's move then to first base. And Brian, Spencer Steer, he kind of doing it all for the Reds last year. He was a first base. He was multi-position eligible, first base, outfield, third base eligible. And I believe right now on NFBC ADP, over the last few weeks, he is just inside the top 100. You think last year was a career year and you're not buying on that career year?
Yeah, I do think it was a career year. I mean, I think the skill set is pretty solid, but there's some yellow flags. The Ks were up and power was down in the second half. His OPS versus righties was 742 with 100 WRC plus against them, which is decent, but they have a lot of good lefty outfielders who are better than him against right-handed pitching. They also have India is supposed to, once he gets healthy, is supposed to be playing some left field. So we all know the Reds scenario. It's a very crowded place, and somebody's going to be on the outside looking in of everyday bats. And I think there's a pretty decent chance it's him. And there's so many guys around him that have, regular playing time pretty much locked in. So he's just somebody. He could do what he did last year, but I think there's enough concern to where I'm not taking him at that cost. We'll go other routes.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of bodies over in Cincinnati, and so are all the at-bats going to be there for him on a Reds team that's up and coming, and I don't think would shock anybody this year if they're in the playoff picture with some of the young talent that they do have there. So Spencer Steer, I think you're buying for that career year. I'm with you. I don't necessarily think I like him at this price. Kev, you look at this first baseman kind of board here. You have, there's the studs of the studs. You have Freeman, Olsen, Harper, Alonso, and so on. Are you in that same philosophy that you're waiting here, or you're like, you know what, I want to pay up for the studs. I want one of these studs. What are your thought for first base here?
I either get it's tough. Like I would absolutely take Freddie Freeman around his cost because it's just 30, 20 with 100 at our runs RBI. It's hard to pass up on that. Even though I do think first base is extremely deep. I think you could go into near pick 300 and get a borderline starting level first baseman in your lineup. But it's also like it's obviously one of the best hitting positions in baseball. It's like if you can't field, you play first base. Right. And the only reason you're playing it is because you could hit, or if you're playing every day. So it's a tricky position to navigate. I'm with Brian on Spencer Steer, though. The reason to draft him is multi-position eligibility. but he's an awful defender. He's in a stacked lineup. Jake Fraley, Will Benson in the outfield can play. India, I think the health issue is a little overblown. Plantar fasciitis, it kind of like pops up and goes away. So I don't know how much he's going to play, but he's going to play unless they trade him, which we'll see. But Steer wasn't a great prospect. He's solid, but he's not great. Can't defend. He had a good fantasy season. If you picked him up off the wire, that's fantastic. But do I want to pay a top 150 pick for him? Absolutely not. I don't really want Spencer Steer. I'd rather wait and take Jake Fraley or Will Benson at the back end of my draft, or Jonathan India, who's like falling to, again, pick 300. You could get him at the end of your draft.
Yeah, and just aligning that they added Heimer Candelario, which I think sometimes slips through the cracks. He's going to take a lot of at bats away, especially with the contract they gave him. So I'm with you on Spencer Steer again as well. Dave, anything to add on the first base position in terms of someone you might be fading?
Completely co-sign on Steer. And just in general, paying for guys coming off a career year is just never, but rarely a good idea. Guys they have up seasons, they have down seasons, skill set's basically the same. You're trying to catch them when the value is right. So when they're coming off a bit of a down season, then I'm much more interested, because you don't even have to get what that they can do to get value out of it. First base, honestly, I like a lot of the guys too. And, Freddie Freeman, I love, because that elite average is, especially with the number of plate appearances he gives you, it's possibly the rarest resource out there is batting average. So it's something that I'm always willing to pay for. There's no one who super stands out to me other than Steer, other than maybe like Christian Encarnacion Strand right now, just because I don't know the playing time situation. So that's really, we've kind of covered that. There's a lot of bodies on the Reds, and right now, in February, I just don't know how much playing time he's going to get.
Yeah, one last thing on Steer I want to point out. If you're playing him at first base in your lineups, you're going to lose that league. Like, he's not a guy you want playing at first base in your lineups. You play him in your outfield, that's a solid outfielder. But again, the price, I think he's going 115 in NFBC right now, which is way too high.
Well, we have to respect Spencer Steer for one thing, that he's become the poster boy of the first base bust for this episode of the show. So respect him for that, but probably stay away from him in drafts. Let's talk middle infield, though. Second base, shortstop players here. There's a few names I want to get through here, because I thought some interesting names brought up here. Some with injuries, others maybe buying. They had some great years last year, but maybe just not buying the tax that's on them this year. I want to go to you, Dave, because Tommy Edman, somebody that just a few years ago was considered one of the up and coming, I don't want to say stars, but he was one of the guys that was going to be one of the top people for stolen bases, going to hit up top a nice Cards lineup. And he's just kind of fallen. And now it's to the point where he's just completely undraftable.
Well, I mean, with Tommy Edman, it's just, he's coming off of wrist surgery. And, you saw it with, Tatis actually had a pretty good season coming back last year, but his power was still way down. Like, if you look at all the metrics, I'm expecting Tatis's power to be much better this year, by the way. But, coming off of wrist surgery, that's always happens. The next season, your power's down. So not that you're drafting Tommy Edman for the power necessarily, but he could also hit at the bottom of that lineup at least part of the time. I think he'll probably hit up at the top versus lefties, but versus righties, he could hit, 7, 8, 9, somewhere like that. And I'm just not buying on Edman this year.
Yeah, I mean, does anybody think what do you guys think about the Cards lineup in general? Because you have the fact that it's probably one of the worst lineups in baseball. He's coming back from injury. He has the versatility aspect, which obviously is a plus. But when he was healthy, he didn't seem like he was a difference maker consistently week in and week out. And in one of those leagues, NFBC or any of those weekly leagues where you have to make a decision on him, I feel like most of the time you were leaving him in your lineup for the stolen base aspect of it. But I just feel like as a hitter, he's kind of just lost his luster. A career low 248 batting average. It's just, to me, I'm not interested. Right wrist inflammation. Again, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Dave.
Did you call it the worst, one of the worst offenses in baseball, or did you mean one of the best? Because that's what it is.
One of the best? Why would you say it's one of the best?
The the St. Louis Cardinals, not the Arizona Cardinals in football. Like look at the Cardinals lineup.
They have Goldman, they have Nolan Arenado, Jordan Walker. Jordan
They have
Walker, I think we'll have a
bar. Brendan Donovan. They have Wilson Contreras, who's like one of the top 5, top 6 hitting catchers in baseball. Mason Wynn's coming up. They have hitters.
But Mason Wynn means a glove first player than more of a hit first player.
He's still okay. Regardless, he's hitting 9th. Who cares? But like all those, Goldschmidt's still really good. Contreras is still really good. Arenado, I'm not a big believer in this year, but even so, he's still good.
I would, maybe it's harsh to say one of the worst lineups. I wouldn't say it's one of the best, though. I would probably put it more in like the middle.
It's one of the best. Yes, it's one of the best. By like every metric, literally it should be one of the best, assuming that, they stay healthy. If they get hurt, yeah, sure, they suck. But that's a really good lineup.
I wouldn't say top 5. I think it was harsh to say one of the worst, but I'll probably put them more middle tier. They do have a good middle of the lineup. I'm worried about just kind of more when you get to the bottom of their lineup.
Bottom of their lineup is good. Edmonds not great, but like for an 8-hitter, 9-hitter, that's pretty good.
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm
Jordan Walker.
I mean, we're obviously Jordan. So where's Jordan Walker slotted to hit right now?
He's hitting 7th. If Jordan Walker's hitting 7th, you have a damn good lineup.
But Jordan Walker wasn't doing much last year. Jordan Walker did come on a little bit at the end of the year, but at the end of his year numbers aren't going to jump off the page at you.
116 weighted runs created plus as a 21-year-old rookie. That's that's very good.
But look at his first half of the season.
Who cares? He's a rookie. He's growing. You're looking at the curve of growth on a 21-year-old.
But so you're saying he's gonna be their 3rd best hitter this year, behind Arenado and Goldschmidt.
He could be their best, honestly. He is like one of the best hitting prospects in baseball. I have like an 80% market share on Jordan Walker, so I'm talking out of my like biased ass. Like I have so much Jordan Walker, it's like bleeding out of my ears. But yeah, he's 21 and he's an incredible hitter, and like he's hitting 7th in this lineup. That's a good lineup.
We will see how good this Cards offense will be. I think again, I would love for Jordan Walker to be good because I drafted him a lot last year. He burned me a little bit, but there is potential for him to have growth. But we will see. It will be something we'll have to watch. Let's talk about more middle infielders before we get too off track here. And Kev, let's stay with you and talk about Ketel Marte, who did have a good year last year.
Yes.
And you kind of, again, is it more just you're not buying off of the high season, or what is it specifically that you're kind of fading him?
Yeah, I mean, Ketel's always weird. He's always nicked and bruised. There's always something with Ketel, like 2021 to 2022. He missed like a lot of time. I think he played like 230 games total between the 2 seasons, which is fine, but he's not really stealing bases. That ceiling never hit with the steals. Like if he gets you 10 steals, you're just like, wow. And out of a middle infield spot, that's very valuable that's invaluable to take away. So not getting that from Ketel, and he again another guy who kind of outperformed his ex-Woba last year. I don't expect the lineup to be as good because someone foreshadowing. I'm out on Corbin Carroll as well. Take him out of the lineup potentially if his shoulder pops out again, which we're going to discuss. Ketel's now in a much worse offense, which that's a fringe bad offense, even though they were just in the World Series last year. If you want to talk about it for the NL. He's not a great per game player. Like he's kind of an accumulator, and I guess the average is good, but he's been kind of streaky. Like 2022, excuse me. He had the 240 average, and last year on a high, he had a 276 of late. So I feel like we've seen the best out of Ketel Marte, and we're just buying name value, which isn't even that good.
The inconsistencies are frustrating too, because he hasn't been able to put it together multiple years in a row.
Yeah.
Since he's become kind of a household name there. So I think that's very right in the sense of like, I'd rather buy him or draft him on when he's out a bad year than where he is right now. So I think I'm with you on that one as well. Brian, Trevor Story is somebody that frustrated everybody everywhere, because I think when he got to Boston, people were excited. Obviously, leaving Colorado was not great, but I think people were excited. Fresh start for him to be able to deliver. Has not done that since he signed that deal with Boston. And you don't think this year is going to be the year that Trevor Story delivers?
No, I don't. Yeah, he's been bad the last 2 years, injured a lot. He wasn't even that good his last year in Colorado. Not one season did he have a 800 road OPS when he was at the Rockies. I just don't see. I know he runs a lot, and I don't think he'll run as much as he did last year. But I think he's going to miss time again. Maybe get 220, 230, which has value. But he's just. I don't know. I don't get it. I think people think he's a lot better than he really is, and just based on his days where Coors boosted his numbers, and I'm just totally passing at his price right now. I think he's way overdrafted.
He's probably also one of those guys that has that name value. People remember his prime years in Colorado. Looking just at his ADP right now it's going 174. So this is a guy that I think last year he was going closer to after 200. He's going back to back with Tommy Edman. Are either of you guys, Dave or Kev, are you guys going to draft Trevor Story at all?
I have, and I've drafted a good bit of Trevor Story. He's coming off of Tommy John, which he had 2 years ago. So I don't blame him for a down 2023. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be Trevor Story of old. I don't think he's going to hit you with a 280, 290 average, but if he could give you a 240, 250 maybe, Fenway is one of the best parks for right-handed hitting. That lineup is also underrated. That's another very good offense, or that's going to be a very good offense in 2024. Story's going to hit atop the lineup just because of A, his contract, B, he's kind of, just a vet. So he has kind of that rapport, that like cachet to hit atop the lineup. I don't think, I wouldn't draft him if I have a struggling average to start my draft. But if I can take that like 240-ish average, you're going to get homers, you're going to get steals. And he still did steal last year in, 168 plate appearances. Yeah, he stole 10 bases.
Yeah.
I think the strikeout rate's going to go down. I think he's going to hit closer to that 240 and the pop is going to come back. Yeah, the year before, 16-13 and 396 plate appearances. That's very good if you prorate that to 600. Like, that's a very valuable fantasy asset in like a roto format. So I'm all in on Trevor Story, another year removed from TJ.
All right.
Strikeout
Trevor
rate's
Story.
been over 30% 2 straight years though. And yeah,
he had TJ. Like, I don't blame him.
He's hurt. I mean, you're definitely going to be a little worse, obviously going from Colorado to Boston. But like Kev said, I think Boston plays very well, especially for righties with the wall there. I think his average is going to be okay. Like, I mean, you have to look at it like, do you think that his injured self the last 2 years is who he really is? Like, do you think his K rate's going to go from 23, 24, 25% in Colorado up to 30 to 33%? I'm not really buying that. So, yeah, I still like him. I think you just have to build a team around him appropriately. You can't, if you're going to take Story, I would take another shortstop that's a little less risky to just to back him up.
Yeah.
And, just don't draft a horrific average team and then add him to it. You just have to, with the right roster construction, I think he's a perfectly fine pick for where
if you could do like an Alec Boehm, Trevor Story combo, that's a perfect mix of like infield. So you look at it, it's all about roster construction when it comes down to it. And again, he had a 31% K rate and a 238 average. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's not that you can live with that when a guy's going to go 25-20.
Yeah, I think there is some risk with Trevor Story, but there's also some reward with Trevor Story. So I think how you guys have kind of said, maybe you're not like buying him everywhere, but having some shares of him might be smart if he does bounce back some this year. There is obviously the concerns in the profile, as Dave mentioned, the over 30% strikeout rate. He did have a under 200 expected batting average last year. Again, Kev, as you mentioned, he's also coming back from being hurt. So maybe those aren't actually what he's going to be doing this season. But there is a lot to like. The stolen bases are great. The power still looks like it'd still be there, 20 to 25 home runs. So, kind of interesting player here, depending on how you like to attack your drafts. But Dave, Nico Horner is someone that's, I don't want to say he's the opposite of Trevor Story, but in terms of power, he doesn't have Trevor Story's power at the position. But he has good batting average, and he was a bit surprised for the Chicago Cubs last year. You don't like him this year, though.
Well, I don't want to say like, I don't think he's going to be some massive bust. And I apologize to my friend and fellow Glarfer, Sarah Sanchez, who loves Nico Horner. I like his skill set. He was a guy I bought in on a lot last year. But again, we're kind of talking about any guy who is having their career year and then you have to buy them at that high watermark the next year. It's just not a good plan. And this is a guy who I believe injured the same hamstring 3 different times in the last several years. Like, Nico Horner doesn't get talked about as an injury risk a lot, but he is actually. Like, he has more risk than I would say a lot of guys do. And I just, at that point in the draft, especially like with your steals, because like if he does hurt his hamstring again, if you're drafting him that high, you're probably relying on him for a good chunk of the steals that you're going to get from your team. And so I don't want to have to be backing up a guy who I'm drafting that high with someone who I can rely on, because then if I lose those steals, where am I going to get him from? Where am I going to replace him with? So, I'm not saying he's going to be a massive bust. I'm not in on him at cost.
That's fair. I think some of our busts, a lot of the reason is because of cost, and that's totally fair to say with Nico Horner there. Third baseman, that was the one position that in the show doc we Dave rarely wakes up before 7 p.m. Is that true? Are you a night owl, Dave?
I had a poker tournament. My friend does a poker tournament every year, $100 buy-in, and I was definitely there until 6:30 a.m. I did win though, so it was
if you win, that's all that matters.
Is that the belt behind you? Is that what you won, or was there a cash prize?
That's from winning Earth.
Okay, nice.
So yeah,
man, the poker trophy goes on the other shoulder next time.
I know. I'm like, I always forget which way I have to point on this thing. It's like the reverse.
All right. Well, let's start talking about some third basemen. Dave, I want to stay with you. Is there a third baseman that you can think of that would be the face of the bus for this position? That was one of the outfielders and starting pitchers, I think, are going to be the bulk of what we'll talk about. But is there a third baseman you want to throw in here?
Yeah, I mean, other than Spencer Steer, who we've already touched on, I mean, a little bit with like Ha-Seong Kim, just because again you're taking him come off from a career year, but I don't think he's like a massive risk. It's really just Royce Lewis is the big obvious one. I know some people will say Ellie. I'm not super worried about Ellie. I do think the second round price is a little bit high for me to take him, but Royce Lewis, I mean, the guy just cannot stay healthy, and I loved him last year. I had Royce Lewis, like I picked him up everywhere early. I stashed him because I'm a huge fan, but for where he's going, I can't trust the health. So I doubt I'll have any Royce Lewis except for maybe in a Yahoo league where I can put him on the IL slot. So, well,
right now, so he's going around pick 48, 49. Where would he have to go for you to take the risk on him?
Probably about double that, I would say.
So his max pick since the middle of February is 66.
Yeah, no.
That's no. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Gentlemen, if you have a bust at third base you feel strongly about, feel free to. Otherwise, we'll go on to the outfield and starting pitchers.
I'm with Dave on Royce Lewis. I'm not touching him. It just, again, Minnesota's offense is fine. It's good, but it's very volatile. Between Royce, between Buxton, Kirilloff, you don't really know who's going to be playing. Matt Wallner is fine, I guess. I don't know if he's going to carry an offense from the middle of it. I like Kepler. It's a very weird offense. I don't want to be having to bank on that, and Royce's injury history as well. If he were a guy that's like a Mondesi, that like you're getting him off injury, but he's going to steal 40 bases, I just don't think the 30-ish homers and 15 steals are that worth it at his cost given his injury history.
If in a 15-team league, he's going the 3-4 round turn kind of. So, yeah, it's pretty high.
Why would I take him and not take like Adolis Garcia, who keeps falling and he's been healthy? I know he hurt his oblique in the World Series, but I mean, I think he should be healthy now.
Yeah, it's our buddy Sporer, who's been on here, was saying that his injury is the only issue with Royce, but he's a monster talent. I think we all agree that talent is definitely there. But the
if it was just like one injury, like he tore his ACL once, like Ronald Acuna, he tore his ACL, but he's not injury prone. Nobody looks at him as injury prone, knock on wood. But Royce is just like, it's always something.
Yeah, it's not like a one issue. There's so many issues with Royce, and we're kind of coming at this from the perspective that we're like in like a deep league here. Like there are certain league formats where you can afford to take more risks than you would, but like if we're talking about like an NFBC 15 team deep league, replacement value sucks. Like taking a guy like Royce that early just makes it so hard on yourself when he goes down, and you can't take other risks around him either, because then you're just compounding that risk and it just doesn't work.
That's fair. Outfielders, I want to kick this off because I hope Corbin Carroll's mom's not watching, because it sounds like Dave and Kev are both very anti-Corbin Carroll this year. So Kev, I'll let you come in for the first punch, and then Dave, you can come in and kind of finish this off here. Why are you guys so down on Corbin Carroll?
We got a jab and a right hook. Okay, another guy outperformed his ex-Wova, but Carroll's fast enough to be one of those guys that can like perennially outperform ex-Woba, so I'm not really worried about that as much, but his shoulder popped out, and we saw the power dip mid-season, and then he kind of picked it up. He looked good in the World Series, but Tatis, just the number one example of his shoulder kept popping out, and they kept popping it back in place, and then eventually, the attrition kept coming on, and then he had to have the surgery. Not going to say Carroll is doomed for surgery. He's not going to miss the whole season. But if, shoulder pops out week 2 and he's dealing with a power drain, that didn't happen to Tatis because he was still awesome going through it. But Tatis is also like a monster hitter. Whereas Carroll, it's kind of his toolsiness and his like well-roundedness that makes him amazing. His speed, obviously, Tatis had that too. But I don't think Tatis and Carroll are like the same level of prospect. It's just like, looking at Carroll, I don't think he can make up the difference if he's dealing with a nagging shoulder injury this season. And going in the first round, no thank you. Middle of second, even so, I'd rather have Ellie. I'd rather have Francisco Lindor, who are healthy. And they have some questionable issues. Lindor's coming off bone spurs. But yeah, I don't want a guy who is coming into the season with a nagging issue.
And right now he's the 4th player off the board. So you said not even in the middle of the second, if you felt you would take him.
Late second, like the 2-3 turn might be worth the risk, but even so, it's like Pete Alonso. It's like maybe I get 50 home runs or I get a guy whose shoulder's going to pop out. It's
Dave,
like,
you're shaking your head too. You're completely out on him right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like completely out. Like if you give me him at a place where it makes sense, but the first round, I can't do it. And I think the one thing that is interesting that people a mistake that they make is they're like, well, I'm out on him at pick 7, but I'll take him at pick 15. It's like, what? Like if you think that this guy could miss significant time, why the hell are you taking him in the first round at all? I mean, this is the argument with DeGrom last year. I was like, I'm not taking him in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, not even maybe the 10th round because I was so sure he needed Tommy John that I don't want to waste a pick. I don't, like at a certain point there comes a point where, okay, the value could pay it off, but we never got close to reaching that. And Kev said it. Corbin Carroll had a shoulder subluxation to his surgically repaired shoulder last year, and he did not have surgery to fix it. Tatis did the same thing back in 2021. He missed time 4 different times that season. So, I mean, at any point, any one of those times that his shoulder popped out, it could have been the end of his season. So, do I want that from Corbin Carroll this year? No. I'm in the first round is not the place you take your risks. That's where you build your foundation, and then later on you take those risks. So, there's probably I know I'm going to have 0 Corbin Carroll this year. He's a great player, but it's just not going to be this year.
It goes with the saying, you don't always win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it. And then for both of you guys, that the injury risk just outweighs the talent for this year, at least.
At least makes it a lot harder to win. I've seen people lose their 1st and 2nd round picks and still do well, but it makes it so much harder.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like you're paying for his ceiling, right? Like, cause he can't really go much higher than this, right? Like the 4th player off the board. I don't think I ever see him going ahead of Acuna. Maybe you could say maybe he's the 2nd best case scenario, but you are paying probably the highest he's ever going to go right now. This is the 4th player overall. So I don't have a problem with either of those points you guys mentioned for him. But I want to get to a different player here, Brian. Is there an outfielder that you feel strongly about fading this year?
One guy I've been in on before, but I've just seen it over and over again is Jazz Chisholm. I just can't, he's going around pick 60, and I just can't deal with it anymore. I don't think. Had him in main event last year, and multiple times every year I've had some of them and just seen the injuries over and over again. Maybe one year he puts it together, stays healthy, and he would smash this pick, but it's a bad lineup. He's going to miss 50 games, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I'll be passing on him this season, I'm sure.
That's fair. I think injuries, again, you have injured every year. It's kind of like, okay, I just don't want to deal with it. And that's fine. Even with his ADP lower than what it was last year, it's something that you could definitely still avoid, and I understand that. Kev, a name that's not as high at the top of the board as we talked about Corbin Carroll, we talked about Jazz Chisholm. Going down a little bit here, TJ Friedl. And I know Justin Mason, close your ears because that was his guy last year. You're fading TJ Friedl.
Yes. Okay. It goes back to the Cincy lineup being, quite stacked as we discussed. We discussed Spencer Steer, we discussed India, Benson, Fraley. Then CES is going to play first base. Candelario, they just added. Noel V. Marte, we don't know how he's going to mix in. I look at TJ Friedel, who's going to be playing. He's a good defender. It's not saying that he's going to lose too much play time, but if you go by xWOBA minus WOBA on the differential on StatCast, I know I keep bringing this up. I think he is the number one. He's the face of outperforming his batted ball. So he had the most luck of any hitter in 2023, I believe. He's fast. He's another guy. He can outperform it perennially, but not to the degree he did. Yes, he is in a great home park. Yes, he is in a improving, should be good lineup. And he has, good bat to ball skills, but I don't think he's going to be as lucky as he was last year. I think his OBP average and all that are closer to what they looked like in 2022, where it was like a 240, 314 rather than the 280, 350. Good hitter, not great hitter. If he gets you like 1525, 1530, yeah, it's possible, but I'm just not willing to pay the price on TJ Friedel because I just don't think the upside's that high either. I don't think he's that good of a hitter. He was an older prospect who came in. He's about 28 now, lefty. We don't really know if he's going to play every day again. It's just not someone I'm into, not someone I'm trying to pay for.
Last year, TJ Friedel had a 2.5% barrel percentage. It's
not great.
Absolutely dreadful. Obviously a career year last year, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing in his profile to me that states that he's worth his ADP right now. Obviously the 27 steals I think are the first thing that jump out at you, but other than that, there was nothing really flashy that I saw in his profile. So I think I could see where you're at with TJ Friedel there, Kev. I do have to ask here because it seemed like we might have a disagreement on Wyatt Langford in the chat. Are we not arguing about Wyatt Langford anymore? Because I was ready for a Dave versus Kev debate here. Are we going to do that or no?
I love Wyatt Langford, so I'll go to war for him if I have to.
No, I mean, honestly, it's just like it's just that there's obvious risk with any rookie, being drafted that highly, and you're expecting him to get playing time right away, and I don't know that he will. I will say though, James Anderson, good friend, I think one of, if not the best prospect analyst out there, and phenomenal fantasy player as well. He's very high on Langford. So, I mean, if anybody's opinion matters, it's James. So,
yeah.
He was kind of telling me more about him, and he thinks he's the best. He's had the best debut season that he's seen of any prospect in the last 10 plus years. So, hey, if James thinks that highly of him, I definitely want to have a couple shares, I think, but I do see that there is risk there. I don't know if he's going to play every day. I don't know if he's even going to start up with the team. Growth isn't linear. We saw Jordan Walker struggle last year. Will Langford? I don't know.
Again, sorry, not to. I said I love Jordan Walker, but as much as I love Walker, I love Langford even more because he has insane speed on top of the other tools.
But is Bochy going to run? That's the other thing.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if you get 15 to 20 steals out of Langford, which he could steal 35 to 40 if you wanted to, given his speed, that's still a win at his cost. And again, like you mentioned, you take your risks later in the draft.
Yeah,
that's Langford. You look at where Julio Rodriguez and Acuna were going in their rookie seasons before they debuted. This is exactly where it was. Langford in 21 AA posted like a full 100 plus weighted runs created plus over. Like he was a full player better than the rest of AA at 21. Like that's the perfect age you want to see. He'll debut this year 100%. I think he'll be in the opening day lineup given the injuries that have already accrued in the Texas. They've just won a World Series. They're trying to repeat. This is not a team that's trying to go cheap. We just saw them spend out on DeGrom. They brought in Scherzer. This is a team that wants to win. I think he's the opening day DH. And if not, he'll be up by the end of April, latest.
Yeah, I definitely think he'll be up for most of the season for sure. And like I said, I see that there is risk there, but like you said, that it's not. You don't have to take him that high. Like if he's going after round 10, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. He has a min pick of 96. Is that too high?
Yeah. No, honestly, I would take him as high as the 90s. But where I get him in the 10th. So I'm getting him at pick 140-ish.
What's your share percentage, Kev? You got 80+% Langford.
I can get back to you on that. Give me 1 second. Like I love Langford. I have more of him in underdog though, because again, you just never know with the rookies. It could be a little streaky, but Langford's someone I'm always targeting in that range because the lineup is that Texas lineup is awesome, even with the injuries.
Yeah. I think that was a good cover of the outfield there. What I'm learning is he your poster boy, Kev? Like, if you was one player you're like that I'm going to have the most shares of this year, is it Wyatt Langford? Or is there another player?
I mean, I've definitely been sniped on Langford. I feel like Alec Boehm. I just keep getting Alec Boehm. Nobody wants him. I'm like, I'm going to take 20 to 25 homers and a 280 average in a first base, third base. Like, I'm going to do that all day at his cost.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm just going to say real quick, I think Esteury Ruiz is by far the biggest outfield risk. The dude sits versus at least half of the righties he faces. He faces all lefties, but he's not a good hitter. And when you draft him, you're building your team speed around him. And if you're hoping that you can just draft no speed and then just take him, I think that's a terrible idea. So he's a full fade for me. He's just a bad hitter. Every year we have these guys, they're bad hitters, but they give you a lot of stolen bases. And then but because they're bad, they lose their job and then they don't give you stolen bases. I know it's Oakland, so maybe he doesn't lose his job, but still, I'm definitely way out on Ruiz.
I don't really have a Ruiz, but I'm also like, that team sucks so bad that they just might leave him in the lineup every day just if he's a good enough outfielder. So,
but they didn't leave him in the lineup every day last year, and they were bad last year. Like, he sat a lot. Like, he sat 3 games in a row, 2 games in a row often. So I'm out.
Yeah, I don't want him either. Ryan, do you have a story?
What?
How much Esteury Ruiz do you have?
Oh, 0. Yeah, I'm out too. He's not somebody I'm interested in at all.
Spores that if you guaranteed him 600 Ruiz plate appearances, he'd still have 0 interest.
Okay, if you guaranteed me 600, I might take Ruiz. I'll take the negatives if he's gonna give me like 75 steals. Even with the steal like baseline much higher and like more runners steal or more hitters stealing, it's 75 if you get that.
Yeah.
Let's close out because
that in the other 4 categories and
definitely just a 1 category contributor. Because we're going to run short on time. Let's talk about starting pitchers here because I know there was a lot of names. Brian, I want to go to you first. Give us 1 or 2 starting pitcher busts that you find yourself not drafting a lot of.
The Cole Reagan's ADP is just insanity. I don't get it. I mean, first draft I was doing,
Twitter's buzzing today about his spring training start.
I didn't
against the backup. Weren't they backups that he was facing?
I'm not sure. I just saw he touched like 101.
Good for him.
Well, I'm still not reconsidering my stance here, but I don't know. It's based, he hasn't been good, and then I know he added a lot of velocity last year, but he had like 7 good starts. I mean, great starts. I'll give him that. They're unbelievable starts. And then the last 4 starts, 24 innings pitched, 16 walks, still throwing hard. But, all this is based on just 7 starts after he's been nothing this whole career to this point. And he was on a bad team. And I don't know. His walk rate was sky high in the minors coming up. I think it's going to be high again. And I wouldn't take him pick 200, and he's going around 100.
Yeah, Cole Reagan, I think, is the buzziest pitcher this offseason. Obviously, what he did at the end of last year and the potential that he has, but definitely he's not consistent. The walk rate is obviously not ideal. And you have to wonder, obviously, I know it's been kind of confirmed 1.5 Tommy Johns, but like, is he going to hold up in a full season, especially throwing that hard? There's a lot of question marks that come with Cole Reagan. I think at the end of the day, if he stays healthy, he'll probably pay off that ADP, but I think the health is a huge risk for him as someone that, again, it has his injury past here. So Cole Reagan's, I'm double checking his ADP just right now, just on NFBC from the last few weeks here, going at pick 105. So if you can, the pitchers going to right around him are Joe Ryan, Joe Musgrove, Justin Steele are like the ones right around him. Do either of you guys, would you rather take any of those other pitchers, or are you going upside in Cole Reagan's?
Reagan's over Musgrove for sure, because I don't think Musgrove's healthy, and I don't think he's going to stay healthy. But I'm okay. Here's the thing: like Brian mentioned, he's on a bad team. So wins, if you're in a wins league, those matter. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Royals are going to win too many games. I think it'll be okay. Even so, Reagan's came in and he was really good. A little better than peripherals, but even so, I think he's a good pitcher. Injury history is definitely something to consider. I'm not drafting him at his price, but I understand someone who does. But give me Justin Steele, give me Joe Ryan all day over him.
What about you, Dave?
I mean, I'm a big Cole Reagans fan, but it's you have to know what you're getting. You know, you aren't drafting someone at that place where you're expecting to get 180 plus innings. You know, so holding up over a full season, probably not. I don't expect him to pitch that much, but people are, and I was just compared to Glasnow. Glasnow's a better talent, but people are paying way up for him and saying, well, if he pitches 120, 130 innings, then that's fine because it's elite ratios and everything. But I just don't see anybody going where Cole Reagans goes who has his upside of that. Like, you can get your secondary ace, basically. So, like, I'm going to get a really safe first pitcher or two ahead of him. It's like my SP3, I can get that guy who can be an ace, and I can afford a little risk at that point. I mean, he's got 5 great pitches. He went to tread the last 2 off seasons, so like the velo bump isn't out of nowhere. Like he trained hard to get that. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be a bust, but he's not the safest guy you take there.
I agree, Dave. I agree. I think he's frozen.
Uh-oh. What happened?
You were frozen and then Kev's gone.
Oh, I'm like, I just saw the spinning circles and I'm like, oh boy. All right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't know.
You kind of were in and out again. There we go. Now the party's all back together. I think we're all good. I have no idea what happened.
What is going on here?
Technical difficulties. We're back. We're the busts.
Stringer was tired of the negativity of Cole Reagans, so they stepped in and they said that's enough. So, Kev, your number one bust, I think your number one bust at starting pitcher, because he was the one name that you gave me, is somebody that's not signed yet, coming off of Cy Young, going inside the top 20 starting pitchers, arguably the most volatile starting pitcher right now in the game that's a good pitcher, you could say, Blake Snell.
Like, I love Blake Snell conceptually, but he was coming off an injury last year. He doesn't really have the innings, like a 128, then 180 last year. I don't think he's going to sustain 180. And I think that's a lot of the reason why teams are being, that there's a lot of trepidation into signing the reigning Cy Young winner. I mean, Cody Bellinger just signed, and he's another guy that I'm not super into, but I understand Cody Bellinger given his, borderline 5 category contribution. With Snell, I'm looking at a 2.25 ERA and a 3.62 xFIP. Looking at 2.25 ERA and a 4.06 Sierra. Really lucky last year. It was a really fluky Cy Young win for him. Mm-hmm. I would have given it to Spencer Strider, but I get ERA matters because of performance and all that.
Yeah.
ERA is very, very flawed. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I don't, he's won it before, so it's not like he's a bad pitcher. Blake Snell's great, but he's dealt with injury. He has all of this luck that came off to him last year, and I think that the pendulum's going to swing the other way this season, whether it be health or performance-wise. So I'm just not interested in Snell. Is there a price I'd buy Snell? Maybe where like Reagans goes in like the 100 to 110 range. Would I take him over Reagans? Maybe, sure. But again, it might depend on team. Like if he re-signs in San Diego somehow, sure, that's one of the best home parks. At a certain point, you do have to take him, but I'm not interested at that top 20 cost.
I mean, leading the league in walks like he did, and to have that not come around to bite him, he was consistently not facing the lineup the 3rd time through the order. I believe it was the last month of the season before he actually got into the 7th inning more than one time. There are a lot of flaws with Blake Snell. The strikeouts are incredible, but usually the consistency isn't there, and the innings aren't there. And those are 2 big things with him. And as someone that was a Spencer Strider Cy Young better last year and lost some money on him, it was very frustrating to see with all those ERA estimators that expected the regression, that it didn't come. I would expect that it's going to hit this year, as you mentioned. And like you said, I think the ADP right now, I wouldn't say it's crazy high, because this is, again, a guy that's just won a Cy Young, and he's kind of going at the back end of the top 20. I don't think it's ridiculous, but I'm not comfortable at that price either for Blake Snell. And we'll have to see where he signs too, because that's obviously going to impact his value once he does sign somewhere. But Dave, I want to give you the chance also to talk about 1 or 2 starting pitchers that you think are busts. Who are those?
Yeah, I mean, we've already mentioned him, but Musgrove is by far my biggest stay away guy. I mean, anyone who ends the season injured with a shoulder injury, any arm injury for a pitcher it's really bad. Even if they have a serious injury, they don't get it fixed. Like they just take some time off with rest and then they come back. I'm still skeptical. Sometimes it works out, but it's generally like I'd have to get a huge discount for it to be worth it. The other one, and he goes late enough where I'd understand like people taking the shot, but it's Nestor Cortez. He missed 2 months last year with a shoulder injury, tried to come back, and then ended up going back on the IL to finish the season. On top of that, he was vocal about the pitch clock being a problem for him, and he's kind of a bigger guy too, so that seemed to be an issue for a lot of those guys, Manoah and Lance Lynn and everything. So I'm just Nestor. I'm going to be out on him even at his like 250 ADP.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I haven't seen anybody that's overly excited about Nestor Cortez, and I think again you have the injuries. Again, he was kind of relying on deception, not an overpowering pitcher, but I don't see there's being a lot of appeal for him this year. So I can agree with you on Nestor Cortez. Were there any other starting pitchers you guys wanted to touch on? Because I think we can sneak in one or two relief pitchers potentially. If you guys have a starter you want to bring up.
Oh, I'll bring up a starter, Ryan Pepio. I think Joe Orico brought it up yesterday. Ryan Pepio outperformed his Zach Sierra by a significant margin. It was near 2. But if you look at it, left on base rate, 99.2%. Look at his freaking, BABIP 189 or 180. I forgot. I don't have it in front of me, but I just remember it was sub 190. Both Clayton Kershaw's career high BABIP was like 234, I believe. And that was in a shortened season. Make Ryan Pepio throw 150 innings, that BABIP's going to spike. That left on base percentage is going to drop sub 80 to like a 75% where like league average is. I don't care how well he suppresses hard contact. I just don't think he's good enough to be that value you're looking for. If you're looking for a raised pitcher, I know this is a bust category. I'm going Taj Bradley over Ryan Pepio. He's younger and I think he's better, even though he did struggle with his ERA. So again, it's all about pendulum swinging one way or another. Taj Bradley had the bad ERA. Ryan Pepio had the good ERA. I think they meet somewhere in the middle where you get more strikeouts with Taj, and they're on the same team. So I think wins are kind of the same too.
I like Aaron Savale, who goes like 12 picks after him too. I think I'd rather take him at cost. Do you think, Kev, the biggest reason he's kind of, obviously those numbers say a lot, but the Dodgers and the Rays are two of the most regarded pitching organizations. And the fact I don't want to say it's like a Rays tax, but it's like he's going to the Rays. They're going to work with him and he's going to become that. You think that's why he's kind of talked about as much as he is?
Absolutely. Raise tax is a real thing. I mean, look at Zach Eflin last year. Look at their history of starting pitching. I mean, Shane McClanahan was an incredible starting pitcher prospect, so it's not like that was a shock. But they've done miracle work throughout the years. Like Ryan Yarbrough looked like an ace at times. People were drafting him in the top 250. There's been a litany of stars like Drew Rasmussen, Jeffrey Springs. Who were they before the Rays created them into miracles last year? So I think there's tax, but I don't think Ryan Pepio's one to pay up for. And the Dodgers pitching dev hasn't been elite in recent history, but even so, it's good enough to be able to identify guys that they can get rid of and not really lose out on. Like look at the Darvish trade, look at the Machado trade. Not really much has come of those glut of prospects. So I think the Dodgers know what they're doing, and it's not the worst loss with Pepio out.
All right, guys. Fantastic panel. I really appreciate you guys coming on and dropping your knowledge on the people who are going to bust this year. Want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find you and what kind of work you do so that way they can come read or listen to it. Brian, why don't you lead us off?
All right, Brian Rudd at Baseball HQ and Sportsbook Wire, and you can find me on Twitter at RuddHQ, and I'll be at First Pitch Florida next weekend. So say what's up if anybody's there.
I will be there. I will definitely say what's up. Dave.
Yes, I am Dave. You can find me on Twitter at RunDMCD. Add that D. And you can find me on Friends with Fantasy Benefits with Justin Mason and High Stakes Heat with Jake Hallisker. And that's pretty much it. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
There you go. I like that. I got to remember to either not put everybody with the same first name on the same panel or just go full heel and put all the mics together, all the Daves together.
Oh, my God.
Mendy, why don't you tell people where you can reach and what you do?
You can find me on Twitter, says on the screen at DMendio2. Tweet out a lot of fantasy baseball, fantasy football betting stuff. Podcast Triple Play Fantasy Baseball Pod. We put that out every Wednesday or Thursday. And I do my betting over at RPO Football, so check that out.
There we go. And Kev, finish this out.
At Rotosurgeon on Twitter. Make sure to hit the follow there. Hopefully I can entertain you either with stats or Sydney Sweeney, one or the other. Hopefully you enjoy. Rotoballer is where all my writing is. The Operating Room podcast, via Rotoballer. Make sure to check that out. Apple Pods, Spotify, all that good stuff. But yeah, Twitter's mainly where it's at. We all have a good time on Twitter. Love talking to the two Daves. Brian's on there as well. So make sure to follow all of us. Justin too. Justin, I'm sure we'll talk in like a minute or so online, or we'll argue about something. I'm looking forward to that.
We absolutely will. I gotta throw cold water on those hot takes that you give out on the Twitter machine. I gotta remove you guys and bring in the next crew.